Well, a late good afternoon. I'm slightly out of breath. I've started this video in my little bathroom because I think the other day was the day that I lost the video that had started in the bathroom. Oh gosh, this sounds rather convoluted, doesn't it? Forget it. Okay, I'm just starting in the bathroom. The reason why is because this is how I heat my little shower room, actually, because it has a shower and a compost toilet. So I have these little ceramic, in fact, the beautiful little ceramic, just because it's quite warm, little candle holders. That's a little oil burner. That's a Michael Kennedy one. And then over here, there's another little candle warmer. I think there's quite a popular thing on YouTube now. You can make these out of earthenware plant pots. But anyway, I think these were the original little heaters. So they just keep the shower room here nicely sort of ambient temperature. So now there, I've started in there. I've got my big muddy gloves here, so you can guess where I'm taking you now. Yes, I'm taking you outside because I've been planting trees. I'll just turn the light off, then you can see there's a nice little glow there, isn't there? Now, so, it's taking some time to come into focus. I'll go slowly. So Jack is still outside. I don't think he's realised that I've come in. I just come in a few minutes ago to get the camera. He was sitting on the driveway, sort of down a wee bit from where I was working. So today's my tree planting day, and with all the work that I carry out here at Bealtaine, I started with the intention of planting trees. I then quickly moved on to coppicing. I then came back to the trees and then I was earthing in some things that I'd already planted. Anyway, I'll explain now as I go along. I'm better explaining as I go along rather than trying to make sense of it at this point. So I've planted one of the little birch trees in there. Now you can't really see it, but I've actually cut it, and I'll tell you why. A lot of these little birch trees, when I plant them, I'm going to cut them back. So there's a bit of thorny coppicing I was doing. That's blackthorn with some really deadly thorns in it. Great for hedging. So I've been coppicing over there and then cutting all the long bits off the stem and putting them back into the hedge. And of course that just builds up earth as it breaks down. So I've been finishing off my little wall here. I've been pulling out the stones because I want to get them further down the garden now. I've been earthing in some plants. I have another plant there to earth in. They were birthday presents that I got. Ah, there's my little robin. And there's Jack, who's finally copped on to the fact that I wasn't here. My little robin here has been with me all the time, of course. So, I've only just planted this birch tree here. See? And at that point I thought I'll just go in and get the camera and I'll explain one of my planting methods. Because with the 3 acres that I got with the cottage, the land was so poor, and some of it was swampy, some of it was stony, some of it was very clay, some of it was it was just a whole mixed bag. So I've had to develop different strategies for different areas. And I mean, you could be working between 2 areas completely different, in soil structure and layout, maybe just 6 feet apart. So I've had to develop lots of different strategies. So I'll explain this strategy here. So you can see the stones surrounding this birch tree now. Well, I've put the stones in there. Because this is a very stony edge where there was an old stone wall, much of which I want to leave in place. I don't want to pull out too much of it. I've taken it down a little bit in order to give the plants more of a chance to grow. What I've done is I've just scraped out a little bed for the birch. And then, because you can see here's some that I'm going to be planting. The roots are quite long. Now what you can do at this point, because the tap roots themselves have been cut a little bit anyway, you can prune the roots. Okay, so this is what I've done. I've taken just a little bit off the roots, and I've literally laid all the roots out in like a fan shape, poking as many of them down in between stones, etc. as I could. Then I started earthing it in with lots of compost, and as you can see there, because it looks very rich, lots of compost as well. Then I've put some stones in order to keep all that soil in there so as the rain doesn't wash it all down the bank. And then I've heaped some more in, some more earth in. So I'll be topping that up a little bit more and then firming it all in really well. Now it's in quite a sheltered position. However, this, where I'm pointing, is the west, and we get the worst of the winds coming in from the west. The south is protected a little bit because of the hill here at Ballyframoil. So what I've done, or what I'm about to do, I'm about to prune this little tree. Now, I hear you ask, why are you going to prune the tree? It's only just been planted. Well, birch trees, which are one of my favourite trees, will grow very tall and very leggy. Actually very beautiful, because you have this lovely bark. I'll show you up here. Okay, can you see just in front of the goddess there? That's a birch tree that's been pruned a little bit when it was young, and it's growing now in 2 stems. Let me show you. Sorry, no, my mistake. It was 2 birch trees I put in there together, and I didn't prune them that much at all. No. So you can see they've grown very, very tall, very leggy. Okay. What I want with this birch tree that I've planted is for it to grow quite bushy. Because, you know those beautiful brooms that you get sometimes at craft markets? They're made from the sort of bushy bits of the birch. They're birch brooms. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you where I'm going to cut. I'm also cutting because when the tree starts to grow, I mean over the course of the next few months it could be quite windy, the lower this tree is to the ground the better. Now I'm not going to cut it all the way down. It's already been cut at one point. You can see with the stems coming out. So I'm going to go about 2/3 of the way up here. Okay, and prune just at an angle, like that. Throw that into the hedge. And then I'm going to prune these little bits. Try to get a clean cut on each one. You don't want any disease getting in. Right. Clean these off a little bit as well. And that one there, which is going up the other way. Right, okay. Now, that will form quite a nice shape, and I might prune it again next year. Very important when you're planting birch trees to prune them or if you have some already planted and you want to coppice a little bit, do it before midwinter, because the sap drops in them around about September, October. The leaves are fully off them around about November. And then, from what I've found, working here on my 1100 trees, I've found that the best time then to prune them is when the sap has dropped, when the leaves are off, and before midwinter, before that solstice. Why? Because the sap rises very early in the birch tree. And here in the west of Ireland, it can start rising at the beginning of January. Now, it's usually around Immock. But the way that the climate's changing and teetering about and whatever, you've got to really be aware of how that's impacting trees. And so I find that there's about a 6-week window of opportunity where you can safely coppice and prune birch trees. And that is from the leaves are fully off in November. Could be the end of November before that happens. So you might only then have a 3-week opportunity. Up until the 21st of December, which is solstice, midwinter. The shortest days. So what happens if you prune a birch tree after the sap has started to rise? Well, you've heard of birch sap and you've heard of birch wine. Birch trees are absolutely filled with sap. And when it's coming back, when it's waking up after the winter, there's a massive amount of sap rises in the birch. If you prune the birch tree, you see, I use the word prune loosely because some people might think, oh, just cutting the whole stem is a prune. So I'm looking at it from that angle, all right? I'm looking at it from the worst case scenario. If you go pruning, heavily pruning a birch tree, it will bleed to death. The sap literally pumps out of it, keeps going till there's nothing left, and then the tree is dead. So, I think that's looking pretty good in there. And I've got another 8 trees to plant. I've also got this Lelandii to plant. I've taken it out of the pot. So in here I've got, now this is a good spade. I'm going to show you the spade that I use. This is a brilliant one for the kind of land that I work with. It's a pointed shovel. And that is brilliant at digging a hole here on this land, because I can't really use the flat edged spade, because sometimes there's like, I'm just hitting stones and rock. Whereas this is inclined to ease itself down between the stones and the rocks and allow me to get some of them up, and therefore make a hole for planting the tree. There, now, I've done all that one-handed. So that's a little explanation of what's happening here at Bealtaine this afternoon. So you can see now I've got quite a nice edging, quite a nice border. I started this project, when did I start this project? Was it the end of September or beginning of October? It was around that time. And it's starting to look as though it's been here for some time. And of course I've been digging out lots and lots of stone. And I've just been putting plants and shrubs and trees in without any overall plan. I mean, I have a sort of a picture in my head of how it's all going to look. And that's really what I stay with. So there we go. I think it's looking quite nice. So, I can't move the wheelbarrow with one hand, and I want to continue with this video for a short time. So, I just walk down as far as the pond, because the next stage in this, because I'm going to bring the stones along to about here. I'm not going to come all the way down this way, you know, because I don't like anything that looks too, you know, what's the word? I'm not thinking of the word perfect, but you know, sort of too man-made, I suppose, or in this case woman-made. So I'm going to stop the stone edging down round about here and allow this rubus to continue just piling out. So that gives a nice little finish to it. But then I'm going to be left with stones, which is great, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to pile them into the wheelbarrow. Well, about 2 or 3 at a time, because the more weight in the wheelbarrow, the faster it pulls me down this slope. Which is a bit scary at times, because it's very slippy. Not too bad on the gravel, but you see where the leaves have embedded into the gravel. Now it'll be a few months before those leaves work their way out, because of course rain and wind over the next few months should settle all that. Oh, I must fill up my bird feeders. Goodness. It's a good thing I've come down here. Oh, look at this. Hungry birdies. Right. So I'm going to bring those stones down to the pond. And what I thought I'd do is I'd line the banks. I'm going to talk to you about that gate in a moment. I'm going to line the banks of the newly dug out, trying to keep this camera still, of the newly dug out drainage system for the pond. I'll show you now. Okay, you see these edges along here? I'm going to edge them with stones, which I think will look quite nice and give a more relaxed look to the new draining system. So it'll look like a little, almost like a little canal. Well, maybe more like a stream. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. So why, I hear you ask, has she got that gate closed and padlocked, by the way? Well, I was walking down the lane yesterday with Jack, and a neighbour came past, and a few neighbours came past actually, and I just waved. It didn't particularly look, because I was keeping an eye on Jack. And at one point I do remember seeing a dirty white caddy van. And I usually do look at the drivers, but I was just concentrating on Jack at that point. And then on the way up, on the way back up with Jack, because it's a mile in total, you know, it's half a mile down, half a mile back. On the way up with Jack, a neighbour who had passed me previously on the way down stopped to inform me that there was a white caddy van he had seen coming up this driveway whilst I was walking down the road. And apparently he had seen it earlier go to this big 2-storey house over there. And then when I got into Ballyfarnan to do the post, I was told by Mary, who works in the little post office there, that there had been several burglaries in and around this area, and that they had noticed this dirty white caddy van turn around in Ballyfarnan. So when I got home, I decided then not just to close the gate, but to padlock the gate. And that way then it would be uncomfortable, to say the least, for any burglar to have to park his little van where it can be seen by passing motorists. And if you park anywhere along this lane, you know how narrow the lane is out there, you will be noticed. And I just work on the sort of innate knowledge that burglars don't want to be noticed. That's the whole point. They want to remain unseen and anonymous. So anyway, I haven't gone out today, as you can see. I've just kept the gate locked all day. Because I remember when I was living in London, I was burgled once, only once in 30 years, which is quite extraordinary. And that burglary, it was my dog who made a big hullabaloo and literally trapped the burglar in the downstairs toilet, because he came in through the downstairs toilet window and then couldn't get any further. And the Metropolitan Police who turned up, the young detective said, "Your dog is worth its weight in gold." And he talked to me a lot actually about burglars and their tactics, and one of the things that I do remember him saying to me was that they like to have an easy option, that they travel around an area and they look for the easy ones. They don't make life difficult for themselves. So I thought, if I just make life a little bit difficult for this burglar or burglars by padlocking the gate, then that would be a deterrent. As much as I can, make a deterrent. Oh my word, look at this. Primroses. Now, you know, it's not unusual for primroses to come out in December here in the west of Ireland, in sheltered places and places where there are little microclimates, you know. Because, of course, flowers like the primrose have got the capacity to react to that temperature that can be trapped in a little microclimate. And this gravel driveway can be a bit of a microclimate simply because of the gravel. It attracts and holds the heat for longer. So, without further ado, I'm going to... There's my little stream. Isn't that lovely? I'm going to cease filming, put the camera to one side. I'm going to stay outdoors. I'm not going to go indoors to load this up just yet. Oh, I don't know what's happened there. I don't know, I pressed a button. Sorry about that. There we go. Yeah, I'm just going to continue planting. Make the most of the daylight. Very important. Now, I put a little photograph up on Facebook this morning and on Twitter to show you what I did with the bay that I cut back in the polytunnel. I've decorated, or begun to decorate, the little metal candelabra over there, because I'm going to be using the polytunnel for Yule. It's lovely just to kind of light it up with candles and to be outdoors a wee bit, you know, rather than just indoors. So in that lovely time, that sort of betwixt and between time, from about this time, which is about 3 o'clock, I think, through till about 5 or 6, The tunnel is just a lovely place to be. And then the cottage then in the evening. So, without further ado, I shall say blessings to you all. It is a beautiful, beautiful day. It is very cloudy, but when it's cloudy, it's warm. And it's quite dark. I mean, some people would call it dismal. I don't think it's dismal. I think it's very evocative of Yuletide, which is coming. It's only a few weeks away now. I think 2 weeks. I must give that little boy a bit of a brush through this evening when I'm sat watching something. I do intend watching something on my little DVD player this evening. So blessings to you all on this lovely, lovely early evening. Oh, I've got to fill up those bird feeders. Right, must go. Blessings to you all.